Greetings and welcome to Growth Hacking's Secrets. I'm your host Mohammed Siddique from Atlanta, Georgia, and the co-author of New Success Secrets available on Amazon. On this episode, we have a special guest, Terry Ferguson. Terry is the host of A Bowl of Soul, a mixed stew of soul music, and it's available on all major podcast platforms, including iHeartRadio. Please join me to give a warm welcome to our guest, Terry Ferguson. Terry, welcome.
Hey, how are you, Mohammed? Thank you so much.
Excellent, excellent. We have few minutes together. Let's just jump into it right away. Let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who you were surrounded with that inspired you to get started with A Bowl of Soul, a mixed stew of soul music podcast?
Well, what inspired me growing up here in New York City, I was always, I always listened to the radio. And, I'm an avid fan of music. And one of the DJs that left an impression on me when I was a teenager was Frankie Crocker. He is a very famous DJ who passed away a few years ago. But I just liked his delivery, his style, and the fact that Frankie Crocker would play all kinds of music on an R&B station, which exposed us to jazz, to blues, to gospel. He exposed people, listeners, to all those genres of music. And that told me that he was very multifaceted when he did that. So that's what got me started as a kid. And I also used to DJ. I grew up during the hip hop era. So I used to be out there with the guys, and they would get records. We would buy records from the record store, and then we would go out there and be mixing in the parks, mixing in the back of the building where we lived. So I was always exposed to music.
How much music industry has impacted in last 12 months? We live in interesting time now.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting time, and I think music is still critical, even though musicians, because I'm a musician myself, we've been impacted because we haven't been able to work at some of the venues
Mhm.
because they're closed because of COVID. But people are managing to get music to the masses, and if that means we do podcasts or we do virtual events, that's how we're going to get it out there.
Yeah, yeah, very good, very good. So, because there are so many changes has impacted your industry, and I'm sure you learned many, many things to adapt to those new changes. So, when we are adopting a massive change like COVID in your music industry, what are the top three missteps to avoid?
Well, I think for me, the missteps that I took, okay, because of the fact that, I play music, the hosting company, well, really the network, radio network that I'm working with, they started taking my broadcasts and uploading them to their podcast hosting company. And I thought about that, even though I was getting an opportunity to display my talents, what I wasn't doing initially was I was not uploading my podcasts and finding a podcast hosting site to upload them to. So that was a misstep because that means that would have been driving traffic to them instead of to me.
Yeah, okay, that's one. Well,
That's
yeah,
one. Now, another thing that was a misstep is that you should own your domain name, meaning that once you know that you're out there, claim you're considered intellectual property. So if they found value in what you're doing, then you need to find value in that as well. And
yeah,
one of the things you need to do is to get your domain name because you realize that domain names, people really underestimate domain names, but domain names are very valuable. And when it's attached to something of value, then that increases you.
yeah.
So when I got the domain name, I was able to drive traffic back to me instead of to them. Okay. That was the second misstep. But the third misstep is monetizing. Initially, I did not know how to monetize. Other people found ways to monetize their value, their product, their podcast. And it was only until later on I started seeing, you know what? I need to try to start monetizing. And I didn't start monetizing until really, really much later on. for my podcast. So when I figured that out, I said, no, you're a brand. You have value. So you need to capitalize off of your value. Other people capitalize, and they were capitalizing off of that. And I understand that initially, but I had to shift gears. So that was a misstep early in the game, is not monetizing.
Just as a follow up to this one, just curious how you're monetizing right now.
Well, what I'm doing now is I developed some brand swag. They call it swag. So it's like hats, t-shirts, mugs, fanny packs. I'm also working with a company called Voxness that they allow me to put ads in the beginning of the show, at the end of the show, so that I can monetize that. So they go according to how many people download off of my website will determine, okay, they're knowing that people are listening. That's how I get paid. And I'm also working with this new company called podgo.co, which they pay you instead of based on how many downloads, they pay you based on now, okay, if you put this ad in, it'll be like they'll pay you $3 per ad that you put in.
Mhm.
Okay. So they're like a new company. So I'm just diversifying that way. And then now I'm realizing that I'm also helping other people to produce their shows. So that's another stream of revenue as well.
Mhm. Wonderful, wonderful. See, one follow-up question got me so many things. I learned few things. Partgo.co. I just visited the site right away while you mentioned. So
Yes.
I learned. Thank you so much for sharing. So, folks, you are watching this. I'm learning as like a student right now live with you. So this is great.
Always, you have to be a lifelong learner. That's right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Life is and learning is forever. That's exactly what that is.
That's right.
Terry, I'm sure you learned all this very hard way, after kind of investing so many months and months of your time.
Yeah.
So, do you mind sharing one of your biggest failure in this process of adapting a change? What did you learn and how did you recover?
Well, what I had to do, like I said, when I didn't buy the domain name, it spurred me to buy more domain names
Yeah.
because again, this is it did because I realized it's not just a bowl of soul. It's the fact
Yeah.
that I'm also broadcasting. I have my own radio network. So I had to buy a bowl of soul radio. You know what I'm saying? And then I had to think about, okay, well, what if I turn into a media company, a serious media company to the point where I'm doing more than just podcasts? Now I have to buy a bowl of soul media.com. You know, you learn some of the mistakes that I did helped me to learn how to move in another direction and also to talk to other people to see what they're doing, because one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a business person is not learning from people that have already done it.
Yeah.
So as I came along, I started learning from other people, and I continue to learn from other people how to do this better.
Wonderful, wonderful. Terry, let's talk about your successes. Enough about failures. We learned so many lessons from this one already. And what are your top three success secrets of being a musician and
Well,
uh,
as far
being a
you know
podcast?
Well, you know what? As far as successes for me is, I feel like, believe in your concept, meaning that for me, the success of a bowl of soul was because I stayed consistent. It was something that I believed in, and it was something I felt had value. And to me, that's what makes the show successful because people want to see consistency. They want to see that this is not a fly by night idea that you had, that you started one year and you ended. I've been doing this for 10 years. And finally, it's come to its fruition. And my vision was to get to the point where I wanted to broadcast to the world. And I did. And I consider that a success. I didn't have the money to buy a physical radio station, but I didn't care about that. My goal was to this get my show out to the world, and I did, and I consider that a success.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I had was, you know, I pitched you. to me, what made the show was successful because I stepped out of my head and I pursued, meaning that I went to someone and pitched the show to them. And I was scared. Trust me, I was scared. But because you're like, who are you? You pitching some show to somebody. I pitched the show to Gary Knoll, who owns the Progressive Radio Network. And I paid attention because I listened to his network. He got a lot of good shows about health and everything. And I noticed that he played R&B music in the background of his shows. I
Mhm.
said, this guy likes R&B.
Yeah.
So I got it in my head and I pitched it to him and I said, I noticed that Gary Knoll likes to play R&B and I would like you guys to listen to my show. And do you know, from that exchange got me started further.
Mm.
So to me, that's a success because he could have turned me down. He said, I don't need your show. I don't need you. I got enough followers. I don't need it. He
Mm.
accepted the show and he saw that I was paying attention to him and paying attention to how he produces his show. Okay. So for me, that's a success. And I think for me, what was a success is learning how to protect your intellectual property. Sometimes we in the United States, we come from a world where first we protect physical assets, and necessarily so, whether it's real estate, whatever, it's physical, but we never think about protecting what's in your head, meaning your intellectual property. And for me, what made me successful is that right away I trademarked the show. Okay, I got the money together, trademarked it, did some copywriting, the whole nine. To me, and when you see value like that, you have to protect it. And that's what's going to help you become more successful because you now see value in what you're putting out there and not others.
Wonderful. Terry, you are not as good as you think. You are better. You are.
I appreciate that. And coming from a gentleman as yourself, I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, Terry, let's talk about your podcast. It's bowlofsoul.com. That's your website. You talk about domain. That's your domain,
Yes,
bowlofsoul.com.
bowlofsoul.com. Yes.
So, why someone should listen to your podcast?
What makes my podcast unique is that it's not just music. It gives a history of R&B music from 1949 to the present.
Mhm.
And what I want to do, I use my show as an education tool. Because
Mhm.
I could be any DJ, I could be any host or personality. But what I use my show for is to educate. Because I feel like a lot of people don't know the backgrounds of the people that they listen to. And I
Yeah.
think that is very important when you're listening to music. You should understand the origins of where things come from.
Wonderful. So, if you want to learn about the origin of the music, so the good starting point would be a bowlofsoul.com, ABOWLOFSOUL.com. Terry, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, wonderful. So, who is do you bring a guest on your shows too?
Well, what I started doing, I decided to make a change with a bowl of soul now, where I'm going to start bringing and interviewing guests. So
Yeah.
I have a segment called Conversations with a Bowl of Soul. And I just recently interviewed a good friend of mine who is a co author of an inspirational book. And I figured I wanted to do it like a 15-minute or 30-minute because I feel like that's enough time to do an interview with folks. So
Yeah.
I'm starting to do interviews and interview not only just music artists, but people that are making significant impacts in the world.
Wonderful. That's good. So, check out the bowlofsoul.com. And we are speaking with Terry Ferguson. And Terry, you are on a growth hacking secret show right now. I like to have a quick word of review or testimonial for the show. What would you say to your best friend about growth hacking show when I'm not there?
Well, I would tell them that it's a show where you interview people from different walks of life, and they share their business secrets, and basically something for you to learn from because you can always do something better. And I think you gain knowledge from learning from others.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Really appreciate it. Terry, what would you say as a final word?
You know what? I would say that, continue to learn from your mistakes, because people look at failure as something negative. Failure is not negative. It's what you take from the failure that helps you to be a better person. So
Mhm.
never look at failure as something that, oh, I fail, I'm dumb, no, if you don't fail, you don't grow.
Yeah, if you don't fail, you don't grow. Embrace your failures. With that one, Terry Ferguson, thank you so much for
Thank you,
sharing your
Mohammed.
wisdom with us today on the behalf of Growth Hacking Secrets community and our entire team. We really appreciate you. This is Mohammed Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. Until the next episode, all good wishes.
All right.